there's thousands of things you're doing every day with thousands of interactions every day are undercutting your health right now, today.
Okay, Darin Olien.
Hey.
Welcome to the Commune podcast.
Thank you, man.
Welcome back from your pilgrimage.
Mm.
That sounded like quite an ordeal. Pretty exciting. And
hell of a way to unplug for a bit. Northern England.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I was doing a little research before you arrived, and we're virtually exactly the same age.
Are we?
Yeah. So November 1970.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
What's the date?
I'm towards the end of the month. So we're not the same zodiac sign, I don't think. I think though I can't say I put tremendous stake in my astrological
Others
makeup.
seem to, but I don't. I just kind of...
Yeah, but I'm a Sag, so I'm November 28th, and I think you're the 4th.
4th, yeah.
Which is perilously close to Election Day, I believe.
On Election Day.
On Election Day.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't fall on a weekend.
Well, that would be an interesting way to spend this year's birthday. I would suggest you unplug.
Oh, my God. For sure.
But, yeah, that is probably not the direction of this particular podcast conversation, but maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll delve into it. There seems to be only one candidate that is interested in some of the things that we're probably going to talk about. And whether he gets a seat at the table remains to be seen. Mm-hmm. So I have a sort of a working theory around the cresting wave of chronic disease that we're experiencing. And really that the origin of chronic disease is chronic ease. And this is a topic I know that you address head on. So, over the last 150 years particularly, our lives have been engineered for comfort. And a lot of that innovation has been centered around that and also geared for profit. But unfortunately, our culture, in this sense, is hijacking our biology. And you have a very clever name for these phenomena. What is that?
Yeah, it was a gift of a research buddy of mine 30 years ago, Dr. Mohsen Hermanish, called fatal conveniences. And it's that double-edged sword of the modern conveniences that we all are using all the time, but have what really is a kind of a long-term chronic problem, and they're largely invisible.
Yeah.
So from personal care to clothing to EMFs, it's all of these things we think are regulated, and come to find out they're very much not, and they have some consequences. And I couldn't help it. I had to talk about the elephant in the room of really, I think, health. These tentacles reach in every area of everyone's life.
Yeah.
And as you know, it can be boiled down to stressors, So, yeah, needed to share about it.
Yeah, and you do brilliantly and at times overwhelmingly in this unbelievably researched tome, Fatal Conveniences. I woke up this morning, or maybe it was yesterday morning, to discover that there is a preponderance of microplastics in my testicles, and somewhat discomforting to sit here with you knowing there's plastic in my balls. And I don't mean to make light of it, but sometimes it's like these stories that then break through. And of course, I've seen a lot of women post like, oh, maybe we finally take this thing seriously because it's in our balls. Or not their balls, but ours.
Yeah.
But this is just one presentation of millions upon millions of how these kind of invisible chemicals and products have essentially invaded our human organism.
Yeah, and there's no one smoking gun, right? And that's the challenge of it. It's like only upon sophistication of diagnostics and chromatography and spectrometers and abilities to measure, then illuminate the invisible into our perception, to then go, oh wow, shit, this is a problem. And it come to find that that's mostly what's going on. And we can talk about the 3M / DuPont / PFAS / article that also recently came out. All of these things have an air, and most of the research, it was so almost daunting for every chapter, because I almost flippantly said, yeah, I'm going to kick this book out. I'm going to bang this out. I've got a bunch of researchers. I know where I'm going with it. And the more I pulled that string, the deeper and gnarlier it got in terms of a lot of the origin stories, a lot of the knowledge of danger, and then, shuffled under the rug for the population, only to be the guinea pigs of these situations. And, the caveat here is, I wish I didn't have to write the book. I wish this wasn't true. I wish it isn't overwhelming. But in order for us to overcome the place we've been put in, we are not at fault.
Yeah.
So it's not like, in the exercise and diet world, they're like, you need to exercise more and you need to eat better. That's not entirely true, right? It's not entirely someone's fault.
That's right.
And what I'm saying by that is our cultural setup now is skewed in such that if that same person is being told that, but also unknowingly exposing them to phthalates and plastics and PFAS and known carcinogens, known endocrine disruptors. So your communication network of your body is being hijacked, your hormonal system that's there to metabolize, to optimize, to make micro adjustments throughout the day to stressors, to sleep patterns, to exercise. If that whole thing is constantly being disrupted by things that you didn't know about, that are constant in your environment, in your food, in your water, in your baby bib to your children, in your clothing, in the man-made electromagnetic fields, if you are running around going, it is my fault that I'm overweight, that I don't feel well, and I can easily go into shame, blame of that, I'm here to tell you, it's not your fault. Like, these things are perpetuating, they're consistent, and they're proximal, meaning they're close to us, which has, and dose is poison. Right?
Yeah.
So it is that whole thing of like, I realize a lot of people don't even want to hear this conversation. I don't, and that's okay. But I'm getting the sense from you too, like, I want to live as great as possible, in as many ways as possible. And I have a part in me that wants to perpetuate life, wants to perpetuate someone suffering less, having more agency of change, because also sovereignty is built on one choice at a time. So if you integrate yourself, if you learn something today and you eliminate some exposure, that's an integration, and that deems and garners more power, and that's sovereignty, right?
Yeah.
Sovereignty is not out there; it's here. It's a choice. So the whole reason I put this, obviously, it's a very personal reason, because I saw my father suffer from multiple chemical sensitivity in the 90s. I was in college, I was studying physiology, I was studying nutrition, and I get this phone. I'll just tell you this little story. I get this phone call, and this is a tenured professor at the University of Minnesota.
This is your dad?
My dad. Double masters, brilliant guy, wonderful human. And he gives me this call, and he says, I can't think. I can't process information. I'm depressed. I don't have energy. And I think through some other doctor friends of mine and who are helping to treat me, I think I have what's called multiple chemical sensitivity. And I'm going to send you a bunch of articles about this. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And then your father, the matriarch, the strong figure, all of a sudden is like
cut down,
and rightly so, complaining about what the hell's going on, this invisible thing. So chemicals of fragrances and laundry and off-gassing of t-shirts and carpets and paints and deodorants and all of this stuff going, if you're going to come home to see me, I'm going to send you a care package of unscented, clean products. You need to use those, or if you don't, we can't be in the same room.
God, wow. And
you're like going, and of course I don't believe him until he starts educating me. VHS before the internet, VHS tapes, like highlighted for me, like, full professor mode, right?
Yeah.
And then that's when I started integrating those things and didn't even know I didn't feel good. I was 20 years old.
Right.
I was fine. And then all of a sudden I was using these products feeling better. And I just, at this point in my life, I was like, I have to write a book that is geared towards talking about this massive chemical elephant in the room of our life.
Yeah, well, I mean, your point there is a good one. At 20, you're probably not feeling the overwhelming impacts because, as you say, this accumulates over time. And we know almost all of these big chronic diseases are progressive in nature.
Yeah.
I think there's a Hemingway quote about going bankrupt. You go bankrupt very, very, very gradually, and then suddenly. That's sort of how you get sick, with a chronic disease. It's so progressive. It's so insidious that you don't even notice it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it presents in all these ways like it did, with your dad. And I know how personal this quest is for you because, he eventually succumbed in some fashion. To this overexposure. And I guess this would be a good time to maybe talk about the nature of bioaccumulation and its relationship to allostatic load, because those concepts are very, I think, central to people's relationship to these invisible chemicals.
Yeah. The caveat is we need a lot more study, and we need to bring about the information that many of these companies and scientists have known. And that's where it gets really sideways, right? It gets really, there's a lot of swear words that are not written down in this book, right? I was doing this during COVID, imagine, right? I'm isolated. I'm never took 2 weekends off in 2.5 years writing this thing. I was obsessed. So I'm diving into all of this research. I'm finding wild, weird faxes that are now PDFs deep into the internet of information. I was like going, how is this possible? I kept asking myself, even when I'm in the middle of it, asking myself, how is this knowingly put out in the world? So the thing that I come back to with exposure is accumulation and proximity are really part and parcel.
Yeah.
Right? And duration of that proximity and of that exposure. That's where things really get sideways. Now, you have parabens, you have phthalates as an example. And because women are exposed to maybe a lot more than us because of their routines and because of their cosmetics and because of their, personal care routines, they're getting exposed to maybe 100, 120, 126 chemicals every day. Some of those parabens and phthalates, which are both endocrine disruptors, probable carcinogens, right? And we don't even know the interactions of these damn things, right? And that's where it really goes sideways of all of these chemicals being created. But some of those do have, and they've shown they have half-lives in the body. So the body, it's really geared towards trying to get rid of toxic compounds. Look at alcohol. Alcohol is a known toxin for the body, shuts down most processes, drives it to the liver, tries to process that out and get that shit out of the body, right? These now are manufactured more and more every day, so it's hard for the body to understand what they are, but some of them do have half-lives. The problem is that the reapplication and the putting these things on. So you're getting phthalates from a lotion, you're getting phthalates from a conditioner, a shampoo, you're getting phthalates from your clothing. So you're not getting a break. You're getting it from the sheets that you're sleeping in, the formaldehyde. We're not getting a break. So going back to chronic, and don't even get me started on electromagnetic fields in terms of chronic exposure. And
we'll get there.
And the data is surprisingly wickedly weird and similar to chemicals. So we need to do everything we can to thwart habits. And if anything, I want this book to instill an action to change out your toothpaste, to change out your deodorant. Don't get overwhelmed. Finish if you feel okay enough, finish what you have, and then just buy something else or make something else. Laundry detergent's an easy one to make, right? A tub of borax, which is clean and effective. For whites, you can use hydrogen peroxide, organic vinegar, and some lavender is the best. And then I throw it outside on the line, and I got fresh scent from nature. Right? So there's always a way, but we need to break the overwhelming convenient side of this thing. Not to say I want your life to be unmanageable. I want you to shift to something that's actually quite manageable, so that we break the cycle of overexposure over time, chronically, so that, to your point, you don't wake up one day going, why do I not have energy? Why am I have medical chronic disease? Why do I not have why do I have ovarian cysts?
Why can't I have a baby?
Why can't I have a baby? Where's my testosterone? Like all of these things. Now you add on top of it, is any one of these going to kill you? Probably not. However, there's thousands of things you're doing every day with thousands of interactions every day that are absolutely without a shadow of a doubt, are undercutting your health right now, today.
Yeah, and this is where the plausible deniability component comes in, right? Because, a phthalate or a paraben at this level,
right,
in this isolated dosage, is never going to be harmful to you, right? So that's what we hear over and over again.
Yeah.
But when you're bombarded, this is what I'm getting. When you're bombarded from every single direction, 24/7, 365 days a year, that accumulation is going to essentially wear you down. It's going to wear you out. And, with alcohol, for example, alcohol's been around for a really, really long time. I mean, we've evolved over hundreds of thousands of years as Homo sapiens and millions of years as hominids. And our body, this organism, your organism, we have built and developed adaptive mechanisms in relation to that environment over hundreds of thousands of years. So things that might be caustic or toxic, we may have built up some immunity to them over hundreds of thousands of years. But the bombardment over such a small period of time, our genetics, they change very, very slowly, but culture is devilishly fast. And we just have not adapted to this level of onslaught.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I mean, you get into this, over 70,000 chemicals that are man-made, created every day with the virtually no understanding on how they affect the body. So keep in mind, we're an ecosystem, and inherently within that ecosystem, you're derailing systems. And then how the actual thing is created is derailing and causing caustic problems on the environment as well. So they're the same, right?
Yeah, I think this is a point that you make so eloquently, is that there is no really separating yourself from the environment. We often try to externalize it. It's like, oh well, we're climate change is hurting the environment. Or whatever, but no, we are, like, I often use the word environism or organment or something. That's what we are. We know that we cannot separate the function and behavior of our organism from the function and behavior of the environment. They're just essentially completely mutually interdependent, but we tend to externalize it. And then, we play around. I mean, you're from Minnesota, right? So, Minnesota, I believe it was the birthplace of 3M, right? So I think it actually Minnesota is one of the M's, I think.
It was one of my dad's first jobs.
Oh, is that right? Oh, God. And so there's a chemist, screwing around in a laboratory, combining, carbon and fluorine. And, oh, my God, this creates a molecule that has a special place in the world. That
special bonding of that fluorine, essentially gas, and carbon creates a perfect surface. It's heat resistant. It's slippery. It's a barrier to whatever it's up against. So, you have food packaging doesn't stick. You have water whisking from clothes, from waterproofing. You have fire retardants, right? You have makeup that doesn't wipe off. You have T-shirts that you can buy now that they say doesn't stain. Same with carpets. Same with bedding. Like, all of that, just hear me now, all of that are indicators of probably almost 100% of the time an indicator of some form of this forever chemical. So this forever chemical, yes, it's really good at its job. That's the problem with all of this stuff. It's really, really good at its job. It's so good at its job, they can put it in everything. They can make it cheap. But the double-edged sword is, and come to find out, this article that we're kind of referencing that kind of ousted this long history of 3M, and then 3M, licensing to DuPont, which then created the Teflon pan, and that was like finally people were like, oh my God, don't use that. Your eggs don't stick. What a marvel! And you're like, well, how? What? Hold on. What is that? What is that surface? right? And so it started to come out, but they didn't realize that 15,000 different versions of this pre and pro fluoral alkali substance is in our environment. And then some of that research and some great, not even considered a renegade researcher, just doing blood work, going, wow, every test sample. This was this was in the 90s, right?
Right.
It's funny because in the 90s, my dad, and then the 90s, this was going on, and my dad worked at 3M, but not at the time because he was already a professor. But it was just kind of strange to kind of read this article and start putting all these things together. So now essentially a lone researcher at 3M started doing all these tests and realized that, wow, everybody that has nothing to do with our company, every random this blood sample.
The amazing thing, because I think she went to the Red Cross and numerous blood banks, right, and was just essentially through a spectrometer, right?
Yeah.
It was looking at just blood samples out in the population. Yep. This wasn't just people working at 3M, and she found PFAS in
every single blood sample.
Right. And then, of course, what did her higher-ups tell her? Oh, the machinery must not be working.
Yeah, so they bought 3 more. She tested all of them. She kept getting... And then she questioned herself because she was being bullied. So then she goes chromatography, and that was even more accurate, and the same thing happened. So she spent a long period of time trying to find clean samples. She had to go back in history.
Right.
To find
like rural China or something. It was that ubiquitous that you have to go so far out.
Right. And so so to rectify herself questioning because of all the pressure, she's like, wait a minute, I know what I'm doing here, but I haven't seen a clean blood sample. Yeah. So she found a clean blood sample from history, right?
Right.
Was able to find a blood sample. And finally was like, oh, it doesn't have it in it.
Yeah.
And and think about that now. And we're just talking about someone who was testing it in the 90s. Come to find out that 3M already knew it in the 70s.
Yeah.
So people, and this is almost every chapter has its own, which I didn't go into because I didn't have enough space. But I got into it through the research. Every chapter has something like this at the inception, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll hold it on the telecommunications side because I have a whole nother story there. So only upon her looking, then she was able to find that which they already knew.
Right.
And it was already, so let me just set that context. This PFAS is a forever chemical, meaning there is no half-life in the body. There is no half-life in the environment. It's bioaccumulating.
Mm-hmm.
And in that bioaccumulation, it is already known to be connected to cancers, metabolic conditions, diabetes, high cholesterol, endocrine disrupting. So where do we also see that? We played with forever chemicals before. DDT. They banned it in 1972. You know it's in the blood of many people today still?
Teenagers, yeah.
DDT.
Yeah.
We've already known that this is a really bad experiment, and we're still doing that. So now cut to where we are today. Toxic Control Act. California initiated, we got to get rid of PFAS. We got to set limits. There shouldn't be any. That was in the 90s. They knew about in the 70s. Now it's 2024. We get an article like this that comes out from the New Yorker, right?
Yeah.
We get an article that comes out. Someone found, now they tested water bottles, 240, on average, 240 microbits of plastic in every liter of water drunk today. We're finding these things only upon us actually looking.
Yeah.
And so we don't have this regulatory system that has our back. We're just assuming as customers, not your fault, which is why we're having this conversation, which is why we have third-party regulatory bodies, EWG, Campaign for Safe Cosmetics. You've got environmental working group, and then you have another like private entities like Mamavation doing a bunch of tests that are not being done. And so these companies do not have all these loopholes through these regulatory bodies that they don't have to prove safety first.
Right. It's so strange that we essentially apply like due process jurisprudence to chemicals. You're innocent till proven guilty.
Right.
It's crazy town.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, I think in this case with 3M, they were actually, I believe, doing research on like in vivo research with rats, you know, applying, you know, high doses of PFAS, and they were seeing essentially complete degradation of
it was killing them.
Yeah, it was killing them.
They already knew.
So
it.
they knew. And again, yeah, that goes back, you know, to the 70s. And it's, you know, one of the interesting things about this article, which is a fascinating piece of journalism. I think the journalist is Sharon Lerner, I'm not sure. Yeah. But is that, you know, she points out, you know, the difficulty that these whistleblowers essentially had because they were being, their jobs, of course, were being threatened. Yeah. You know, they had families to support. And this is the trickiest part about, you know, change from the inside, is that, you know, it's very complicated and very thorny.
It's complicated. And also you've got people who want to do the right thing. They're seeing what they're seeing. And then their whole livelihood of their own family is at risk.
Well, and you saw, like, I mean, you know, this isn't totally analogous, but like the stories of Karen Silkwood, for example. I mean, what happened to her? You know, she died in some mysterious car accident.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the whistleblowers or you know, the insider, the tobacco industry, I think has a lot of parallels to what's going on. Yeah.
Tobacco industry created the game.
Right.
They created the fantastic PR, and I say fantastic facetiously, but fantastically well done.
Yeah.
To deceive.
Yeah.
And to kick the plausible deniability. No one can prove causation. Like, and they just kicked the can down the road for 40 years, and used media and used, at the time, doctors to say, no, there's nothing wrong. And they use things like, you know, pregnant women, it's not going to affect the baby. There's a placental border that there's no way that the placental border would allow chemicals to go through to harm the baby. So you're fine. You can drink, you can smoke, no problem. And you're like, well, now we know placental border is giving everything that mom is exposed to, that baby's exposed to. And now babies being born today have hundreds of chemicals already in their umbilical cord feeding them. You know, and this...
So you're saying before we ever even have a modicum of a choice, we are already infected by these chemicals.
Yes.
Yeah. God.
Yeah, in the womb. It's not magic.
Yeah.
Like, it's these you know, chemically, biologically, we keep those things in place so that unwanted proteins or endogenous normal chemical reactions in the body don't go into the placenta, into the blood-brain barrier from the digestive system. But we've introduced chemicals, glyphosates, pesticides, herbicides, 60 to 80,000 chemicals, PFAS. We've introduced all of these things that derail our own biological systems, that are opening up these protected barriers. And And that's where now the science is showing that we're getting the crap beat out of us. And and obviously a mom doesn't want to knowingly hurt their child. And that's kind of the thing that moms are just the superheroes of our society, right? They are just, they're the gatekeepers of the
protectors.
home. They're the protectors. They're going to do everything possible. If moms were controlling regulation of what was healthy for us, our whole society would change overnight, right? And mom's like, there's no way we're going to put plastic, petroleum, fragrance-filled endocrine disruptors as diapers on our child. It's never going to happen. Not going to happen. But yet they don't know that it's harmful to children because they're being sold it.
Yeah. I think that, the trickiest tightrope is really balancing conveniences, with the deleterious impact. So my grandmother, she was born in 1910. She died in 2014, so she was 104. Nice. When she turned 100, I interviewed her before I had a podcast. And I asked her many questions about her life. But, if you can imagine how many decades that she lived through. And she was born lived in the Midwest her entire life, kind of very simple woman, highly moral, just, not complicated really. It was funny, by the time we did a slideshow when she turned 100, and I collected photos from her whole life, and by the time she turned 30, she looked almost exactly the same as when she was 60, that she's 90. She came from that old stock where they would, she put on her, her frock and did that thing. And so I asked her, what was the most impactful technological development across your life? And of course, I had my biases, right? I was going to be the internet, like airplane travel. Right. You want to guess what she said? The washer dryer. I was like, Grandma, what? She's like, it saved me half my week. She was raising kids, and she had a number of husbands. They all died, 4 of them. And that convenience for her was just life altering. And she explained to me the process by which she would, wash clothes, and she was darning clothes and, doing all of that. And the time that this convenience saved her. Okay. So and at that juncture, I really heard it, I get it. And then, of course, the flip side of that is that, like, literally every time you wash your clothes, like, what's happening? Like, I couldn't believe what I was reading about, like, jeans in your book. Like, I have a pair of jeans on. I think they are, like, a little stretchy. So they have, like, a little, like, Lycra or something or elastane in them, which is really, what are those? What is that?
Yeah, it's petroleum.
In my jeans.
Yeah. And it's not natural indigo anymore, and it's not 100% organic cotton, so it's genetically modified pesticide cotton with azo dyes and formaldehyde and elastane, and
these innocuous jeans have all that in them.
Yeah, and then when you wash them, I think what you're alluding to is when you wash them, on average, 50,000 microbits of plastic break off of there and then now go in the environment. That's just one wash of one person at one time. So now think of the billions of people. Obviously, not all people have washing machines, and not all people have jeans, but it's the most, used pair of slacks on the planet. And then on top of it, we buy on average 5 t-shirts a year. All of that, some of these things, like even 8,000 chemicals it creates from growing the cotton and all the chemicals it takes to then processing the cotton and bleaching and dyeing and then washing and bleaching again and like creating other colors. All of that stuff is 8,000 chemicals to create a t-shirt. 8,000
in one t-shirt.
And I couldn't find anyone, because it changes based on where it's being made, but thousands of liters of water per t-shirt are used and then usually dumped. It's not reclamated water. It's contaminated, dirty water that they discard. There's no discarding. There's no away. Again, this is one planet and we're all here. There's no away. There's no magic truck shooting our shit into the atmosphere or in the stratosphere or on another planet. It's all here. So that's where you want to be a climate activist. Number one, start with your climate. Clear up your debris, clear up your chemical, clear up your space, optimize your life, get those jeans, get that plastic freaking underwear off your balls, get those stretchy sports bras off your boobs, off your tits, because literally your baby, and there were studies done on this, where a lady was breastfeeding and that baby, when taking a nipple, was receiving PFAS and chemicals and formaldehyde. And I mean, think of that. We don't think of that stuff, but again, proximity. And now all of a sudden, your precious little child, and you think you're just wearing a yoga bra. And it's like, these things are dangerous over time. And how many times are you breastfeeding? And how long is your child breastfeeding for? And what is that then doing? So it's like, we've got some work to do here to unravel the fatal, convenient life. I'm not saying let's go back to,
hunter-gatherer days.
Hunter and gatherer, but let's think about, as entrepreneurs, as people inside, there's great, beautiful people inside a lot of these companies, and as people consuming these things, let's be more conscious consumers. We have the numbers, man. Like we move, we create the change. So and I understand, you can have a bunch of people saying, I can't afford, the perfect, Vivo shoe or something to let my feet be free, and they're using responsible materials. Like, okay, maybe, or I can't afford, the 120, organic cotton t-shirt from Industry of All Nations, for example. That's the cleanest t-shirt I've ever seen in my life. Okay, maybe you can one as opposed to five. Maybe you, and maybe the people that can afford it, maybe you do the right thing. So we drive economies, and which is why I put so much DIY information in here. Do it yourself. Do it with your kids. Show them how to make the toothpaste. Show them how to make the laundry soap. Show them how to make deodorant. Show them how to make lotion. Like let's and then put it in a mason jar, and you've got it for the next year. Like this stuff is economic. If you start with the intention, we can do anything we want. We can recreate so that we move forward in a healthier way.
Yeah. Well, what I found in this book that you do so effectively is you really urge people to make that which is unconscious conscious, right? And just that the example with the plastic beads coming out of the jeans, for example. Right. So I started to think about that. Okay, well, where do they go? Well, I don't know. Where does the water go when it leaves my house? So it goes into the sewer system, I think. Okay, well, where does that go? Right. I think it goes out into the ocean. Okay, so that there's all these kind of microplastics then going into where does that go? Well, it goes into aquatic life, right? Okay, sure. Where does that go? Well, to the grocery store, and then I go and buy it, and then I eat it. And then where does that go? It's in me. And, as you begin to actually ask yourself more questions and bring that which is unconscious conscious, then you do realize that there is no separation between you and the environment.
Right.
That the plastic coming out of your jeans is ending up essentially, as part of your organism. It's, and so these are, I think, you've used, I think, the phrase like non-consensual experiment. That's what we're all undergoing. But then knowledge is power, right? Knowledge makes it not as non-consensual.
Right.
And then you can start to, take greater agency. And it's really gratifying to do so.
Big time.
It's really awesome to grow some of your own food, or to wake up in the morning and go up top and get eggs from your chickens. And yeah, it might be a little more inconvenient, but you go, it's very, like, the most kind of stark example of this is you go to a convenience store, right? What's in the convenience store? All the things that'll basically kill you.
The worst example of what not to buy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for people, though, that do feel overwhelmed and almost kind of numb in the face of the enormity of it, what do you tell them?
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. It's a process. It's a journey, just like anything else. You don't become strong by working out once, right? You don't become healthy by eating one good meal. It's stringing things together. Like you said, just because you make your bed once in the morning doesn't mean the next morning it's going to be made for you. It's these constant habits. And if we can become, it's that gradient change between, this is what I've always done. Now you've just disrupted that because you just gave me information that I didn't know. Now that I know it, what are you going to do about it? So that gradient between your knowledge has gained, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to switch to a healthier toothpaste now? Once you switch, it's the same habit. Once you switch to a healthy gene, you're just wearing the jeans. It's not like you need to do anything. Once you make that shift. Now listen, when I put on my clothes, I know where everything came from, especially my underwear. And it feels better. It literally, physically feels better. My integration of standing proud in my integration, of putting that toothpaste in my mouth, knowing it doesn't have red dye number 40, it doesn't have neurotoxin fluoride, it doesn't have these things, it doesn't have plastics from the plastic freaking tube, it doesn't have these things. I am still doing the convenience of being able to brush my teeth.
Right.
I'm just doing it with a much better product. So it doesn't, I understand the information may feel overwhelming, but life is about integration of action. So when we're able to go, wow, I learned something, I'm going to apply it. It's going to be better for me. It's going to be better for my home. It's going to be better for my body. It's going to be ultimately better for my community and my environment. Feels good.
Yeah.
And it's that I bring this up a lot. Sovereignty of choice. So now I don't have to worry about the toothpaste anymore. I don't have to worry about the filtered water, my RO system. I add my unrefined electrolytes, my glass bottle. I don't have to deal with plastic in my life anymore as it is consuming my consumption of water. I now have better water, better for me, higher hydration level because now I've added clean salt from maybe the Redmond, Utah pink salt cave here in the US that doesn't blow up things and does it responsible. I'm just saying, like, and I've put solutions into this thing.
Yeah.
So I think the best overwhelm is a lie. It's a lie. That's just in the head. So if you can make an action, if you go, hey, okay, cool. Let's filter my water. Let's get a glass water bottle. I carry one with me everywhere. I create my water every day, right? Let's start there. Maybe change out my underwear. Maybe change out some of my personal care stuff, my deodorant. Please change your deodorant. It's lymphatic. It's connected to all kinds of endocrine disruption and immune compromising. So let's go back to some safe choices there. And then just slowly start to learn. You can just skip the whole damn book and go in the back and be inspired by all the different companies, if you can afford it, buying from conscious companies, or just create a lot of it your own. So you don't even have to skip the overwhelm of 3/4 of the book and just go to start integrating solutions. Or read the first chapter and go, holy shit, okay.
Yeah, I can only imagine how many people are wondering where Darin Olien's underwear comes from at this juncture. But I certainly am wondering.
Industry of all nations.
There we go.
Yeah, it's three Argentinian brothers. I actually just finished working with a buddy of mine who took up a project of looking at clothing. So we did a documentary on it, the toxicity of clothing and how it's the second largest polluter on the planet. So these guys, industry of all nations, they did it right. And they know all of their growers, in the Andes Mountains, all the alpaca, clean, safe pets that they shave. They don't harm the animals. Wool, organic cotton, all plant dyed, no synthetic fibers. So amazing. Those are the companies that I love to support and illuminate, because unfortunately, man, there's very few companies that are doing it right from A to Z. It's just like, come on, man. I've been in the supplement industry, so don't think that I wasn't hitting fatal conveniences along the way with flavor houses and
excipients
and all of these kind of ways that people are using botanicals and their manufacturing processes, and so all of these things. So most companies are eco-washing, and they're not doing it correctly, and they're marketing incredible claims, and then you're buying neutered product that the botanical doesn't even have a chance anymore because they don't know what they're doing, and they're just taking advantage of a marketing claim. So this kind of thing, we got to circle around and support the good companies.
You do a great amount of research celebrating the companies that are doing it right. I really feel like in the book I can feel you sort of bringing a torch into the night sky, and of course that reveals like how vast, how much you don't know, and then it's but there are very, very tangible activities that we can engage in. Like I said before we started, I went and bought some glycerin and some coconut oil and some shea butter and a bunch of essential oils and some sodium bicarbonate. I'm going to have, 3 teenage daughters. You can imagine, like, my house is like a CVS, basically. It's like a phthalate fiesta up there. And and so over this weekend or this week, we're gonna integrate some of these things into our life, and we do. Beautiful. Of course, a lot of that, Skylar and I, just being the old hat that we are, we've integrated that. Sometimes I think of us as our own PFAS. They're like we're inseparable. I'm like the carbon and she's the fluorine and we're slippery. No one's going to break us apart. 36 years in. We're like a forever chemical couple. But so there's where there's a bunch of agency.
Yeah.
But let's talk, for example, about electromagnetic radiation or EMF, because this is a place where we might have some less agency. Of course, there are probably some things that we can do to minimize our exposure to EMF. But I guess let's just start. What is EMF and why is it even an issue?
Right. So electromagnetic fields, there's, just tackling the first, X-rays, obviously far in the scale of radiation.
Yeah.
We know that they just tear DNA apart, rip it apart acutely, which is why when you get an X-ray, they put on the lead.
And dude goes in the other room. He's
right.
like, I'm out of here.
Not even a chance. I'm out of here. I got to do this every day. So they know that. So they said, okay, non-ionizing. And so in this spectrum, and by the way, all of these EMFs from Wi-Fi routers to smart devices to tablets to phones to gaming devices, they fall in this non-ionizing zone. Mm-hmm. And the flippant kind of thing is that's fine.
Right.
But when upon looking, and there's a lot of data that is not out in the world because there's a whole other story about the telecommunication. I will argue PFAS is a big one that's covered up. Tobacco, obviously in our lifetime, was uncovered. Mm-hmm. And I will also put EMF as it relates to the telecommunication world. They already know. I've read it. They had their own independent researchers in the 90s. The EPA, it fell on their lap to regulate electromagnetic fields of telecommunication. They knew there were challenges. They knew there were dangers, and they've pushed it away. So what is it doing? So I want you to think about, again, proximity and duration creates stress. It starts derailing things. So take a phone. When a phone, a fine print of a phone says that don't put it up next to the body within, I think it says 9 centimeters. So you're supposed to answer a phone like a call like this, right? So they're saying don't put it up to the head. Do you see anyone picking up the phone and not putting it up to the head? So now proximity and duration. Up to your head over a period of time. What the research starts to show is stress response increases free radical oxygen species. So we all heard the term antioxidants. You have a normal metabolic process that has stress. You eat antioxidants. It helps create homeostasis. When you bring in this other situation that the body doesn't know how to deal with, a polarized radiation. So non-polarized is the sun. It's sending out its broad spectrum. Polarizing it is it's that signal is coming to your phone, right? It's polarized. So it's right. It's purposeful. And it's created by man. So there is a natural stress response on a cellular level of this occurrence of free radical oxygen species. Also, a lot of data showing proximity and duration creates over time, not right away, but DNA damage of the RNA and DNA signaling. All of that people don't realize. It's not just chemical. Mm-hmm. Chemical's the second phase. It's first electrical. So when your DNA is talking to your RNA to repair proteins in your body, reassemble amino acids. All of that communication is an electrical signal. Why myeloma shows up when you have proximity on next to your brain and tumors and things like that is because it's disrupting your natural electrical signals of your body. So all of that starts to show up and again, some people have greater issues than others. It doesn't mean that stress response isn't still happening, right? So the other thing that freaked me out with proximity and duration is it opens up the blood-brain barrier. So it allows proteins in that aren't supposed to be there. And once that happens, it starts creating an inflammatory response in the brain. And God knows over a long period of time what that's going to show up. We know Alzheimer's, dementia, that's inflammation, right? Like a type 3 diabetes. Mm-hmm. And that inflammation anywhere in the body is a really bad scenario. So when I looked at all of this research, and this is hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of mammal studies, again, when the telecommunication, their own researchers did this research, they knew that these indicators were showing up all over the place. And then overnight, the EPA lost its funding to regulate this. It shifted to the FCC.
Yeah.
And so then the FCC became the regulatory body of the telecommunications, saying nothing, virtually nothing about safety. It 20 years ago, based on safety standards, and that safety standards is not taking into the effect the electromagnetic field of a cell phone or all these other devices. It's also not taking into effect the frequency generation of these. It's only saying proximal thermal heat. It's not updated its safety standards, which is insane. How much advancement has happened in 20 years of our electronics in our life, and you haven't updated your safety standards? So there's plausible deniabilities there because they haven't done enough human studies, but have overwhelmingly brushed off the mammal studies, the rat studies showing these stress responses. Anyone right now can go do a Google search on electromagnetic fields and stress responses, and you'll find one study after another. So again, we're in the same scenario. It's fine. We just need to advance, right? And so now we're in this thing where it might as well be, it's smoking, it's PFAS, it's whatever it is, it's this telecommunication. Now, what can people do? Because I want to leave people on a high. There is a lot of powerful things you can do as an individual. If you have a cell phone on you, in your pocket, shut it off. The other thing that I didn't mention, the other side of it is fertility. Tons of fertility studies as it relates to proximity of a cell phone, of male testosterone, PCOS on women, like again, and then women wearing a cell phone in their sports bra, like cancer correlation with that stuff too. So
get it off your body.
Get it off your body. And if it is on your body, put it on airplane mode, right?
Right. Because when it's on, even if you're not getting a call, it's like pulling.
Yeah.
Right. And it's especially, if I understood correctly, when it has poor service, that's actually when it can be most detrimental,
it's
right?
Pulling the most.
Yeah.
So when you have one signal,
if you have like one bar and you have it up to your ear,
it's the most
the
intense.
worst.
And listen, a great friend of mine, August Bryce, who owns a company called Tech Wellness, who I learned when I was looking for solutions. There's about 17 to 20% of the world has electrosensitivity. Most people don't even know it, right? You have fatigue, you have fibromyalgia, you can't sleep. Look into it, mitigate your electromagnetic exposure. So August has dedicated her life to finding solutions. You can buy a little device. You can turn it on in any room, and it will it will go crazy, and you can see it will take the invisible into visible on this device, and it will tell you your electromagnetic field exposure. And then what can you do about it? First thing to do is don't put your phone up to your head. Buy an air tube and plug the frickin' thing back in. Just a little touch on Bluetooth. I use no Bluetooth at all. Especially, think about it. I've said it several times. Proximity, how close it is to you over time. Mm-hmm. Just because the frequency is the same bandwidth frequency as the cell phone, it's just not as strong on that little Bluetooth, but you have it shoved in your head potentially hours at a time. So that's still derailing and causing stress responses. Bluetooth, throw it away. Plug back in. August has a great, you can find these air tubes. Right. Plug back in. Air tube doesn't allow for any electromagnetic field. Any plugging back in is better than a cell phone up to your head. And then if you're at home, you can use you don't have to hold it. You can use the speaker. Right? Those are things you can do for your phone. At night, if you have Wi-Fi, which obviously most people do, turn it off. Turn it off at night. Sleep under no stress of your Wi-Fi router. Mm-hmm. There's a little, remote controls. You can just bink.
You can make it convenient.
Yeah, exactly. You can just shut it down. Yeah. Also, if you really want to go, all of my new houses from the burning that I had and the Woolsey fire, all of them will never have Wi-Fi. Everything's plugged back in. Even in my yurt, I have plugged back in.
Full Ethernet everywhere.
Yeah, Ethernet. You can plug your phone back in. You can have it off and plug it in with an Ethernet cable, and
it's blazing fast.
It's blazing fast. Yeah. And listen, we don't really work in big areas of our home. Occasionally we'll take a call and we're walking around. I get it. Right. But from our office, we can plug back in and then shut down all that response. So those are some very again, I really emphasize children. If you are having them use a device, download whatever it is that you want them to use or watch and shut it down. Put it on airplane mode. Just have a download, turn that off, because the kids it's on their laps, it's on them, all of that stuff. Their immune system, the strength of their skull is less. The amount of radiation that penetrates us as opposed to them is a magnitude high by going all the way through the skull. So this is very dangerous for children. Mm-hmm. So those are some things that you can do to minimize, and I know several people with electrosensitivities. You can buy Faraday cages for your bed. Yeah. If you're in an apartment, if you have neighbors with Wi-Fi routers, you can't shut that off, but you can sleep under a Faraday cage. Essentially, it looks like you can just roll it down at night. It's like a mosquito net. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't allow for that same penetration of dirty electromagnetic fields.
Yeah. I think so many people are sleeping with their phone on their nightstand, right? Or even in closer proximity than that. I think in your book, you're talking about kids sleeping with it under their pillow, right?
Oh, it just makes my skin crawl.
Yeah. So just charge your phone in the closet, right? And just close the door or something.
Yeah. And turn it off.
Turn it off.
Turn on airplane mode at the least. And shut your Wi-Fi router out. You'll sleep like a freaking king or queen.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, this is, I think you did a fantastic job in the book, and of course here today. I think balancing the scope of the problem with the possibilities of solution.
Yeah.
And I think it's both scary and empowering, sort of the slow progressive nature of this thing.
Yeah.
It's scary because it's insidious. So if you don't know, you're not aware, there's a lot of potential impact. Right. But once you do know, because it is relatively slow and progressive, and that accumulation happens over time, you can adopt a lot of practices that stop the accumulation in its tracks.
Right.
And like you say, take more agency over your life.
Totally.
Be the sovereign. Wear the crown.
Totally.
Cool, Darin. Where can people find your important work? Because I know a lot of people are going to be like, okay, give me the recipes for that, or give me, the companies that are doing the good work.
Yeah. So if they want to look in the book, there's like a lot of that stuff in the back. And then darinolien.com. We've got a lot of cool podcasts. We're diving into a lot of these things. And Darin Olien Social and everything else. And if people sign up for my newsletter, I'm dropping some bombs in the newsletter too. So nice. Again, it's all about finding our way out of this stuff, and again, I vet companies pretty intensely. So when I find something that works, I let people know, and I make sure that they go, okay, but you're going to give all my people a discount, right? So I try to really make it advantageous because sometimes these things are more expensive. Yeah.
Like we're both Vivo barefoot guys, or like I'm wearing mine. I think you're good.
Yeah, I've got these are the new grounded ones.
Oh, those are the grounded ones.
Yeah, there's copper wiring.
Conductive wiring in it. So you're getting I should say negative earth charge.
Yeah. Get the Schumann resonance traveling through my body.
And so, these shoes, for example, they can be expensive, but also the more demand there is for these kinds of products, if you believe in supply and demand, then pricing will come down. And so I think, we can all come together to create, to crest this wave, to demand, a higher quality, safe environment, for us and for our children. So, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Really excited to get to know you better. And you've already bent the arc of my next couple of weeks now. I'll report back to tell you how all these products shake out.
Right on, man. Well, I always love it when someone embraces it. And I know deep in my soul that it's going to benefit you and your family. Yeah. So
cool.
Thanks, brother.
All right, Darin. Thanks, man. Hey, thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then I think you'll love this one too.